Welcome to a football show Monday edition, back at an old time slot, 1 o'clock. That is Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com. I am Braden Gall. We are brought to you by our great and amazing local sponsors and partners, Sinkers Beverages. More information on that draft party coming up soon, so stay tuned for that at the end of April. Going to be a lot of fun. PK, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Hello, I am well.
Good to see you back in the friendly confines.
Good to be back.
And we'll discuss everything that you learned, everything that the NFL learned, everything that the Titans have learned. A lot of changes, I think more so than we expected on the roster itself last week with Cushenberry, Xavier Woods, and, of course, the trade of T'Vondre Sweat. What does that do to their overarching strategy from a free agency, draft, roster management standpoint for the entire offseason? You got a little confirmation around a new logo, and so lots of stuff to do today on the show. If you want to get involved, please do so. Logan Jones at 66 now, says Bustin, captain of the Logan Jones fan club. He did test extremely well in the RAS athletic scores. So did Jake Slaughter, by the way, from Florida, I believe. So center, interior guard, certainly an option for the Tennessee Titans, potentially, but not at 66. We'll get to that. Go forth. Hello, gentlemen. So if you could share the product on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, that would be great. I think we're up and running on all three platforms again. So if you could share that, tell somebody about it. Subscribe, thumbs up, all the stuff that people ask you guys to do. We would really appreciate it. Paul would really appreciate it. I know personally. Sinkers Beverages would really appreciate it. And, of course, I would appreciate it as well. So please do so. If you want to get into the comment section and ask about any players you want, you can do so. You can absolutely take care of that. We're going to try to kind of resort to an off-season 1 o'clock schedule from here on out. Now that, is there anything else that's like outside of the draft that's, like, I think we're kind of settled in now to our offseason schedule outside of the draft for Titans fans. So I think we can kind of predictably handle our weeks from here on out, right, PK?
I should hope so, but you never know. We can't overpledge.
That's right. That's true. Under promise, over deliver is always the right way to go. Richard says you think any teams view Styles as an edge? Maybe the Commanders, and they trade up to 4. Titans take Love at 7. I have been asked this question. I don't know about you, PK, but I've been asked this question via text message from listeners. I've been asked this question by friends and family. I've been asked this question on every show we've done. If he was an edge player, he would not be graded the way he is. I just want everyone to know this. If he was a true edge, we would evaluate him and grade him as an edge and would not be ahead of Arvell Reese, David Bailey, and Ruben Bain. If he's an off-ball linebacker, which I don't know if you know this, PK, but he is, then he is the best player in the draft. In my opinion, he was number 1 on my board going into the combine. So I just think that's the way you have to look at it. It doesn't mean the question is wrong or bad. It doesn't mean he can't transition later, but you are teaching him an entirely new position and then is evaluated based on different skills and different scores in a different group of people. And so it's just, you got to keep that in mind. You don't just draft a guy and then move him. It's a little bit harder with those two positions versus if you're talking about corner to nickel or like a Logan Ryan type career transition, right? Where you start outside, you end up almost more as a safety throughout the course of your career.
I'd look at it this way. Like Reese is a guy who's got experience at both. They see the edge trait in him and expect him to be an edge. Now, as an edge, he's a guy then, if you're playing particularly in a complete defense, who you could pull from end or edge and an offense would go, oh, he's in the A gap or he's in the B gap. Isn't that a unpleasant surprise for those guys who are trying to block from there? And his versatility then would make him a pain in the ass in a more complete defense. In the Titans defense, if you're taking him, if you had him at end and you're taking him away from there, then you're replacing him with a far lesser player there. So you're weakening yourself. Still, you might use it that way. If you're taking Styles away from his very best thing, which is roaming all around from the interior, and putting him at that edge, you're probably taking him from his best place, putting him at a lesser place, and then replacing him with you're weakening yourself at 2 spots by doing that. So could he show up there once in a while to complicate things? Yes. But is it a move that you would make? No. And Braden could think he's the best guy. A lot of people could think he's the best football player, but the positional value, I think, makes him far from the best non-quarterback in the draft.
There is no question about that. Just because you are the best thing at what you do in particular, Jeremiah Love and Caleb Downs are also in that category. We'll get to sort of the non-premium position option for the Titans. I think it is far more of a smart option and a better option if you move down to 8, 9, or 10, hypothetically. Then all of a sudden you can start to talk about Styles, Love, and Downs, in my opinion. And I would not even include Downs in that category, honestly. He's a great player, but I think Styles makes your defense better immediately at linebacker next to Cedric Gray. He probably is there for 10 years, and he's probably really good. That doesn't mean he's worth it at 4. I think he is worth it at 8, 9, or 10 if you can add another pick later on in the draft, but that's a different subject. We'll get to that coming up momentarily because I do want to touch on the logo stuff first. Then I want to get back to the combine and everything. And I'll say this. I will apologize openly to Easton Freeze.
Look at that.
If anyone, because this was not the intent of our original conversation, was not to throw shade on any report in any way. I thought the internet was overreacting to a grainy, like an e-commerce logo of a plush football where the people went nuts and thought this was what's going to look like. This was not meant to be contradictory to anything Easton or A to Z had said at all. It was just that's not what it's going to look like, guys.
I took it as you bashing them, and I enjoyed it.
Fair enough. I do think more reporting since then has been more thorough and larger scale, and including Nick Suss and including you and others. You got the billboards now that are up. We knew something was happening, and certainly, if again, my intention was not to like question the veracity of Easton's report. That's not at all what I'm doing here. It's more about the specifics, and we still do not know what the uniforms are going to look like, what the third rivalry uniform could be, or the home uniform or the road uniform. We don't know what color the helmets are going to be. We know, though, that based on kind of everyone's reporting, that this is going that the new logo, which was kind of the old logo but without flames and a little bit of a squared off edges to the T, that is now what it's going to be as their primary logo, right? Because that's where we're at in the story, correct, Paul?
That is what I confirmed. That logo, which we've now seen, I don't know, maybe a little better, a little bigger on
Agreed.
a new era hat, red circle on the outside, white T, white stars, light blue background. That is a primary logo. That's something that Easton didn't have. He had that. It was one of the marks. Again, I'm with you, not demeaning his report at all. It was a great first step. I've gone further in confirming that. The blunted edges seem to be a big deal to people, and they are, in fact, dumb. Blunted edges. So that's it. Now, again, we've seen it in soft fabric as opposed to hard paint. So what does it look like in hard paint? Does it look more shield-like? The more mock-ups that have been taken from this and painted up, I like it more in a paint than I do in a fabric. So we'll see about that. Also it looks better on different backgrounds. I took that logo and then put it on different backgrounds. On a navy blue background and a red background, it looks better. On a light blue background, it looks washed out. So there's still a lot to be seen. The other thing that surprises me, I haven't been to the Pinnacle yet. Have you?
I've been inside it. I have not been to an actual concert.
All right. Well, they say capacity 4,500. I'm unclear if there are seats or not. It seems like the floor is wide open and maybe the seats are in the balcony.
Yep.
But I know the date to get tickets, quote unquote, to this event on the 12th has come and gone. I understand making it exclusive, but when you've got a 66,000 seat stadium that's about to open in a year with a lot of PSL people to it, I thought the reaction was going to be that's too exclusive. People are dying to get to this thing. But if you go back to 2018 when they unveiled the new uniforms, or was it 16? Lower
18.
Broadway was absolutely packed. And so I understand doing something different, but I thought there would be uproar that this is too small and that not enough people got into it. I haven't heard that uproar. Yeah. So I'm kind of surprised, but it's super exclusive.
I think a free outdoor concert series kind of party is just it's going to attract more people, and a new uniform is going to attract new people. And right now we don't know if that's what this is. I think we can all guess that's what it is. But we just, fans don't officially know, hey, we're going to go see the new uniform first. Like if you sold it that way, and it doesn't get out until then maybe I could see it. I guess I'm not. That one hasn't. I know you said that on last week's show too, and I think it'll be interesting to see as it gets closer, which I guess is next week. So we shall see. Let's get to some of the comments here. Jordan Pace, Styles make fights would be a hell of a draft headline with Sonny Styles. I like that. Coach Will says, "Amen, Jordan." Jason says the new logo hacked off its mullet and turned into an adult. I can't really disagree because I think it is a fantastic improvement on the old logo, including the light blue and the red circle trim there. To your point about you haven't seen it yet, we have not seen it yet in a digital, online, high-res, polished version yet. And until you see it, and I know this is really graphic design nerd stuff, and this was kind of my point a couple of weeks ago when the Easton story came up. Until you see it in like a perfectly professionally polished version on either shirts or in person or on a high-res digital image, you kind of don't. Things can get lost in translation very easily.
I agree
when it comes to graphic design. So I think you just got to be patient. I think you did a good job, even just the poor AI kind of it doesn't look like slop to me, but that's what people call it. On putting the white is a terrible idea on the background. It cannot be on a white helmet. It just does not pop. It's not a recognizable.
I've seen people put it on a white helmet, and it looks better than I expect.
So we know, and I think you reported this, and I didn't know this until I talked to you about it, that the Titans tried desperately not to have white helmets at when they launched, and obviously they went back to the
work because from a long distance
they went to the Navy. I don't believe they would do this. Now, I personally don't love the red. Red's not like necessarily my favorite color, but I don't personally love the red. But it is the most recognizable brand. Is to put a red helmet with that new logo there. That blue pops off. I think you're correct that it pops off the Navy as well. My guess is, just Occam's razor here, you leave the helmets dark blue and you put the new logo on there. It's the least sort of adjustment you have to make as a fan. It's more similar to what you've seen, but also a recognizable new brand. The baby blue is probably my favorite, but that's because I love the baby blue helmets. I think the red, I was surprised at how the red popped as a very recognizable brand. And if you want your team to instantaneously be recognized on television by everyone in America, the red is the thing that makes it different than everybody else in the NFL. There's a lot of dark navy. There's a lot of blue. There's a lot of blue and red, frankly. Patriots, Giants, you can go on and on and on. There's not many where red as the primary helmet with the baby blue. It's a very rare combination. So I don't think they're going to do that. But I
don't think we're seeing that. I think it's going to.
I don't think so either.
I think it's going to be white. I mean, this is me guessing now, but I think it's going to be Oilers like helmet with this logo instead of the Derrick.
You're saying a whitish helmet, white, blue trim over the crown. Logo on the sides. I think the other way to make that more recognizable is actually what you've seen on the internet, which is the red face mask. The red face mask is a very recognizable look that not many teams have. So,
but a lot of waiting to see. Not a lot. I mean, something big's coming out the 12th.
Yeah,
and I don't see how it's not the uniform. I mean, you got to get the uniform out. If the uniform's coming out this year, which nobody said it is, but nobody's also said it isn't. If the uniform's coming out this year, you got to have it out before the draft.
And that's right.
If you're going to have it out before the draft, well, you're either having two events or this is it.
Red was always a Titans insider color, says Coach Wills.
Third color.
Doesn't Jeff wear the red sleeve? Yes, and frankly, Cam Ward has said this. He is a big fan of the color red, and that's why he wears red shoes.
I don't think a guy that's not a guaranteed second contract guy gets any say in what, and this stuff was in motion before they drafted Cam Ward, and guys wearing red sleeves has nothing to do with anything.
No, I just think there's a lot of key players on the team that like the color red. That's all. Just a point of fact. Doesn't necessarily mean it. Big fan of the white with the red face mask, says Boston Diamond. The fact that everyone is skeptical or quick to judge this logo is a testament to overall lingering fan skepticism to the state of the franchise, in my opinion. Expectations in the bar are very low. I'm with you. I cannot believe the fact that they just barely touched up the T to make it look more like a letter and less like a
sword.
A sword. That people are crazy about that. All right.
I mean,
anyway.
the traffic I'm still getting on that story is ridiculous. I put up 2 stories today and 2 stories plus that story all have traffic.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Sinkers Beverages, everybody, please support good local small businesses. PaulKuharsky.com is one of them. 440 Media is another one. Sinkers Beverages, though, 5-time liquor store of the year. They have a craft beer walk-in fridge that is the best in the city, according to all of you in Nashville. They provide great local beers like East Nashville Beer Works, like the hat I am wearing, like Yazoo Brewing Company, the original, and, of course, Tennessee Brew Works. You can get all of those beers in that award-winning craft beer fridge at Sinkers Beverages. They've got a great set of mixers. They've got a whole aisle with mixers if you want to make a cocktail for yourself. They've got a huge wine selection, a really knowledgeable staff, great bourbon allocation. That's where I get all of my bourbon. And, of course, you can get the THC bevies and the mocktails as well if you're still trying to do it a little bit cleaner and a little bit safer. So lots of things for you guys to do. And, again, search Uber Eats and have Sinkers deliver the booze directly to your house every single time you need something. Obviously, don't get in the car to drive. Just have them deliver that booze right to your home. All right, some draft pick questions here first. Then we'll get into our takeaways. What if Love is the best player in the draft at number 4? I'm going to package a bunch of comments here together because a lot of them are about Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame running back. Drafting a running back in the top 10 doesn't go well for bad teams. I have zero research to back this up.
That's true.
I appreciate that. Let's see here. Okay, so there's a couple about Jeremiah Love. Look, I had said, I think, like in December, be prepared potentially for the Titans to take somebody who is at a non-premium position, but is clearly the best at their position and likely is one of the best 3 to 5 players in the draft. In my opinion, that's Sonny Styles at number 1. That's Jeremiah Love. I think I have him at 4 behind Mendoza and Caleb Downs at 2. Downs is the other one. Kenyon Sadiq is another one that we've mentioned in the past on this show. Obviously, all did extremely well at the combine, kind of validating all the things that we already knew about these guys, which is they are great. They are great football players. They all make the Titans better immediately. But it is really hard, and we sort of teased this conversation already, PK. It is hard to see any intelligent, logical, rational explanation at 4. The only one I can think of that would even be in consideration for me at 4 would be Jeremiah Love.
Great.
But better to take him at 7 or 8 or 9. All of whom could be interested in Jeremiah Love as well. So those three players, Styles, Love, and Downs, they might be the 3 best players in the draft other than Mendoza. In fact, that's how I would rank them. And I think they all make the Titans better. But I think you have to trade down a couple of spots and pick up some value and still get one of those guys if you think that those are the best players that you want to draft.
And in order to do that, somebody in the league needs to really want up for Reese. So I think consensus is building that Reese is the second player in the draft. Reese is going to the Jets. They traded Jeremiah Johnson to the Titans. They are as end deficient as the Titans are. They've got a bear covered there. So they're taking one of these guys. They're taking Bailey or Reese.
That's right.
I think it's
That's
safe to say. So one of them is off the board before you get to the Titans. It seems like Arizona would likely be taking offensive tackle or trying to deal out like the Titans are trying to deal out. So there's another problem. Like somebody could deal, if somebody's dealing up, they could deal ahead of the Titans for fear that the Titans be taking one of these guys, which is a likely scenario. But if they were to take an offensive lineman, Titans, the reason to trade there is you go get the second of the 3 defensive edge and rushers, and you get your choice of Bain or Bailey, probably. Is that attractive? Yes. Is the price tag going to be down from what it usually would be? I would think so. To get to 8, 9, I'd be tempted to do it. Then you get to 8, 9. Is Love there still? I'm not positive. Is Tate there still? Probably.
I think it's very possible, PK, that if somebody comes up to 4, they're actually coming up to get Jeremiah Love. It's possible. I do think that if you look at if you've got to your point, if Reese is at 2, you're getting either Reese or Bailey at 4 as an available option, probably with Bain. And you also probably have Styles and Love and Tate and Downs. And I think Downs is outside of the top 10. If you trade down to 13 and he's still on the board, maybe you think about it.
I don't think you could trade down to 13 just because
I don't think you can either.
Your board probably has 12 to 15 first rounders on it. If they don't match up with everybody else's 12 to 15, you run a risk of really winding up at the bottom of the barrel of your first rounders, and you're not going to come out feeling great. And I want you to come out feeling great.
I think you're right. And I think the drop off is around that 9 or 10 range, which, I think that includes, Bain and Bailey. That includes Love and Styles. That includes Tate. That includes fill in maybe 1 or 2 more, maybe Downs is in there. Point is, you can go to 9. There's 5 or 6 guys. You can go to 7, 8, or 9, all of whom could be interested in coming up to get either an elite pass rusher or a star weapon. I think you're probably more likely to get Styles at 8 or 9, frankly, or the second receiver, possibly Tate, but we'll get to that in a second. I just think that I don't think you can justify it taking it 4 other than Love. And I think you really just have to you have to have a great plan for him. I do think he helps your star quarterback a lot faster, of course, than either Styles or Downs does, or frankly, I'm not. Maybe Tate does more, but I actually think Jeremiah Love does more to take the focus off of Cam Ward. But we'll see. That brings us to sort of what happened last week and how does that affect the strategy and the way they're looking at all of this. And that is, Cushenberry's gone, Xavier Woods is gone. Great center draft and a great safety draft potentially later on. But more importantly, your trade of T'Vondre Sweat. The question I have here is, first, how much does this affect their offseason strategy writ large, which includes free agency? John Franklin Myers seems like a primary target, going to get people that he has great relationships with, whether it's on the coaching staff or off.
Virtual lock, as long as somebody doesn't blow the doors off his value.
So if they sign, let's say they go out and get him to put next to Simmons, and then Jermaine Johnson is your large bull rush power edge. That's what he's going to be at his size. He's more of a power rusher. He's not the wide 9-speed bend guy that they talked about, Gus Bradley talked about. That is Bailey or Reese, frankly, in the draft. Less so Bain, but still, Bain, Simmons, John Franklin Myers, and Johnson would be almost impossible to run the football on. I don't know how much they pressure the quarterback, and that raises questions about your corners. But to me, that if you go sign John Franklin Myers, to me it screams David Bailey at 4. That's what that screams to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I'd also say, I don't expect them to stop there. I don't think that's prohibitive of them getting another guy in free agency or drafting another guy in the 3rd or the 4th. I think they need wave. I think you're going to hear them talk about getting a wave of guys. They're going to, this will be more Jim Washburn-esque, thinking that a guy is burned after 4 plays, 5 plays, and needs somebody coming in to relieve him, and that they need depth.
You're thinking in-game wave, not like an off-season wave.
Yeah, no
talent.
Well, they need a wave of off-season talent in order to have an in-game wave of players. Yes.
Line change-esque type of stuff, where you see 2 out of 4 going off the field every 3 plays to keep everybody fresh, bring a lot of different people into the formation.
And we can't be saying, "Oh my God, why is Jeff Simmons off the field?" They're going to be lesser without him, but you have to have some minimum level.
Yeah. This is a good question from MLB P2 PTDX, which is, if Reese and Bailey are gone, why would you take the 3rd best defensive end over a blue chip running back or linebacker? The simple and easy answer is that they're lower on your board. That's an easy way to evaluate that. The other one is, I don't think it's very hard to see Reese and Bailey both off the board. And Bain is still, that we know that they like Bain as well. Like they feel very comfortable with Ruben Bain. He may not fit their exact needs better. Excuse me, I'm getting choked up here.
Try to take the emotion out of it.
He may not fit the exact needs specifically better, but long term, he's a great piece to have on the defensive line. And if Johnson doesn't work out and you draft Bain goes back to the other side and becomes your big burly edge the next year. So he's a valuable asset either way.
Excuse me. If we're talking true blue chip, like the definition of blue chip, which is like multiple season All-Pro, maybe Hall of Fame conversation kind of guy, then that's a fair question. And then you take the blue chip, guy.
Yeah.
And I think the Titans will. If the Titans think that Jeremiah Love is that level of football player as compared to the other guys, they will take Jeremiah Love.
The other angle to that is the gap between blue chip and this is the old war argument in baseball, right? The gap between blue chip Jeremiah Love and blue chip Sonny Styles, who are the two I would put in that category, probably Caleb Downs as well. But let's start with those two because Downs is not going in the top 10. He's an outside the top 10 player. There's really good safeties in this draft that you can get later. Titans could use one, but probably later on. The question is, can you get an above average linebacker and running back at a significantly discounted and cheaper price point versus can you get a wins above replacement type of edge rusher over Bailey in particular, or Ruben Bain? And that ultimately is part of this conversation. But I do think you're right. I think if they look at Sonny Styles or Jeremiah Love and they say this is the best player in the draft and he's a 10-year All-Pro, like you can't pass on that guy.
Well,
you got to take him.
Running back would be
6-year,
4-year All-Pro with a 7-year career is probably where you're looking. That's just the adjustment of the position, and that's part of what makes it a less attractive choice overall.
Yeah. Bustin says, how much of this Love talk is smoke from the team looking to trade back? And not just them, but a lot of teams looking to trade back potentially.
Well, look, I mean, who put out that they think Love's the best player in the draft? I don't remember who put it out, but
was it Matthew Barry? Was it Matthew Barry that said he heard the Titans loved Jeremiah Love at 4?
Yeah.
I love Love. Why can't you love Love?
Fantasy guy.
Right, exactly. I love Barry, but come on. Richard says the running back is a finishing piece. The Titans don't have the infrastructure to support Love. Bad teams draft running backs in the top 10. See Falcons and Raiders with Bijan Robinson and Ashton Genty. Build in the
I think that's fair. Leave that up for a second, though. I think that's fair. But was Eddie George a finishing piece? Was Chris Johnson a finishing piece? And was Derrick Henry a finishing piece? I don't know. They were foundational pieces that they were on the front, more on the front end of those teams that got filled in around than they were finishing pieces. So I think your thinking is logical, but it's not the way it's worked for this franchise in its DNA, which I know some people don't like me talking about that. But it has been a foundation to which they've built around here, not a finishing piece.
I think the only difference there, first of all, of course, if you could tell me you're going to get a Hall of Fame running back in the second round of the draft,
yes,
now we're talking about something. I'm on board with that. And I can't remember where Chris Johnson was picked, but it was in the mid-20s, right?
Yeah, mid-20s.
And Eddie George was 14th overall. So none of those are the same as number 4, just for the record, like just as a point of context. Because if you do trade, I know they're not going to, but if you trade down to 14 and get the franchise running back, you're also adding another receiver and another corner. And that ultimately is the difference between taking Love at 4 and taking, and again, in my opinion, it should be David Bailey. I'm even more on the David Bailey train now than I have been in the past. So let's go there. Is there any player moving up or down in your view that is either into the conversation for the Titans or out of the conversation for the Titans after spending a week, hobnobbing and rubbing elbows?
David Bailey was thicker. I think we talked about this than I thought, which kind of makes me like him less. I've got kind of this obsession. I really want a twitchy, bendy edge. Now, maybe we're moving away from that and they're getting bigger generally, and some bigger guys can do some things. There's not a real guy with the lean, the wide 9-ish qualities that I want here. And yeah, that's why I'm a little more into Reese, but I don't want to wait on the conversion.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean about Bailey. I do think he fits. That is the one thing, if you're watching tape on him, he is not as overly athletic right at the top of the pass rush when you've got to do the drop the hip and bend and swim and get around. That's like the one area where he's a little bit stiffer. But if he's out really wide, if that's the position you're drafting him to play, you're coming more to straight line at the quarterback. And that's what you want for David Bailey. Is he just because he did test extremely well athletically. All the things you want to see. He is into a range of type of athlete that works as a pass rusher in the NFL when you get to certain metrics and certain benchmarks. Whereas like Cassius Howell, for example, out of A&M, was under every single athletic testing trait that you need for an edge to be good. And if he's already not good against the run, for example, that really hurts a player like Cassius Howell's stock out of Texas.
So maybe you're just not as wide this first go round as you'd like to be based on who's available. I was talking to Pete Prisco. He really likes is it R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma. He says he's the twitchiest guy in a field of guys that aren't that twitchy. But I don't get the feeling that the Titans are real excited about him.
Rob, this is pretty good, actually. Bain, then Reese, then Love, then Styles. Bailey, then Reese, then Love, then Styles, then Bain. I don't necessarily disagree with that order. I might go Reese 1, but I think that's a pretty solid order right there, actually.
Bailey, Reese, Love, Styles, Bain. Well, I mean, it's a pretty solid order for the Titans, but that's not the way they're coming off the board, probably.
I could see it going Reese and then Bailey and then Love and then probably Bain and then Styles, but I think that's about right for the Titans, and that's I assume that's what Rob is doing there. Bailey did run a 4.51, said Forrest. I agree with that. Saleh has said repeatedly about making Cam not have to be a superhero. Love helps them do this more than anything on their schedule. There's also another one up here. I want to make sure I get this, and this is the right way, I think. Ed Henry, of course, good to see you, Ed. Shouldn't Love be viewed as a potential 2,000-yard from scrimmage player? If so, hard to pass up. I think that's where we're at with this. You have to think that he's that, and that he's a all-pro for at least one contract, if not 1.5 contracts, for you to draft him at 4 and for him to be the right piece. Here we go. Is this the Latham versus Bowers decision all over again? Says Joe.
I don't see it that way. I mean, tight ends even further removed from, I'd put them outside of running back and outside of, I wouldn't put them out.
Well, what I think he means
inside linebacker.
What I think he means is this freak of nature, specialized offensive weapon versus the do the right thing, build the house, build the foundational piece in the trenches. So I think that's, if you're looking at Bain versus Love or Bailey versus Love, I think there's very similar, like, strategic elements to those two decisions, if that makes sense to some degree. Yeah. Let's see here. You can find, Forrest says, you can find a starting running back in the 3rd, not finding a starting end in the 3rd unless you get lucky. Who would be the best candidate to want to trade up to 4? PK, I think you did a similar type of column on something like this last year. I think Washington at 7, the Saints at 8, and the Chiefs at 9. Those 3 are 3 that have extra picks in the 40s. You wouldn't have to charge them too much. They don't have to pay a lot to come up a few spots. You can still get your guy if it's Love or Styles or Tate at 7, 8, or 9, and then you pick up a pick in the 40s, and all of a sudden you got an extra draft pick.
Saints maybe for an edge or an end. Chiefs, the whole league would like the Chiefs not to end up with Love, who could fall to them conceivably at 9, which would be bad for everybody.
Agree.
To pair him off with Mahomes.
So I think there you go. Love would get us a 1-2 punch like Steve and Eddie. Use free agency money to get out. So here, this goes. Let's back up a second and go back to the John Franklin Myers of it all. Throwing a lot of resources at edge or defensive line and throwing a lot of resources at wide receiver are not a bad idea. That includes free agency money. That includes keeping Calvin Ridley. That includes drafting someone at 4 at both positions. You've already made the trade to add depth to the edge with Jermaine Johnson. I think you could do the same with another low-level free agent signing. I think you could do the same at wide receiver. I'm curious what you think how the strategy has changed based on your time in Indy and based on the roster changes. I want to kind of back up and kind of reset here. Is that not – how do you view their resources now and allocating those resources moving forward?
As a result of what change? I'm sorry, I lost it for a second.
Just the Cushenberry, Woods, and the trade of Sweat, and then you look at Johnson adding depth to this piece. We talk about what's of value at 4. We talk about trading back. We talk about keeping Ridley or not keeping Ridley. Like, I think throwing resources, free agent dollars, and draft picks at those two positions, edge and receiver, is smart. You can throw a lot at it. So I think you still have to figure out how to allocate that and where you prioritize stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're getting an edge in free agency. I think you get a wide receiver in free agency, and I still think they're draft priorities and high draft priorities. Somebody asking about Lemon here. I think Lemon would be second to Tate. I think Jordan Tyson, man, you just think of how they're out on injuries, and this guy's had 3 big ones, and he's got a hamstring that lingers. I'd cross him off. And the Titans are out. They're saying they don't want, that they've got all these injury analytics. I think maybe we said it with Suss the other night. The best, it's an easy thing to repeat. The best predictor of future injuries are prior injuries, and he's an injured guy. So stay away from injured guys.
Yeah,
I didn't hear a lot of buzz about Tyson at this.
That's interesting. I heard a lot of buzz about Mekhi Lemon.
Yeah. And he got up there, and it was real, he's got that wide receiver bravado, brashness, and whatever. And if he's a fast Amon-Ra St. Brown, faster, that's pretty
a hell of a player.
Yeah.
I think he's a really great player. He was my favorite receiver of these 3. We'll get to the Carnell Tate running the 40 of it all. I think that's fascinating. Just like how does that even happen? Mike says Chris Brazel, who ran very well at the combine, wide receiver 1. Nope, he's probably not in the. Maybe he's involved at 35, but I don't think so. Lemon has there's a very fine line between California cool, laid back, and dismissive and condescending. There's a very fine line between those two, and I don't think we yet know if Mekhi Lemon is which one he's in. I
think he did. Who he reminded me of a little bit with the bravado and the Dory Jackson, a California kid.
Yeah, USC. Yeah,
talked like a Dory Jackson a little bit.
Okay. Let's see here. Would you rather see them sign Kenneth Walker or Max Crosby? They'd have to trade for Crosby, so Walker would be excellent.
I'd rather have Crosby any day, but Crosby's going to cost you an arm and a leg.
With all this cap space, sign KW3, draft Bailey or Bain, or draft Love, sign the edge. I'm taking option A. That was a lot there in a comment. I do appreciate you, David. Let's see here. Okay, so is there any? So you said you changed positions, or you changed thoughts on Bailey because of his thickness. Is there any? Tate, it seems that Carnell Tate, and this is a good way to get into the 40 time thing. I'd like you to explain how that can even happen. But Carnell Tate, it seems like talking to folks there and hearing you and Nick talk about this, that the Titans mention Tate before they mention anybody else almost every time. And it seems like they're not the only ones to do that. Is there a pretty clear Carnell Tate is number 1, or did his bizarro 40 time situation where he stumbles and then runs it again? And it's a 4.57, which is among the slower wide receivers. But there's a report from Adam Schefter that he was clocked by teams in the high 4.4s. Like what?
Well, that's bullshit.
What do we make of that?
It's reporting of hand times being better. It's a laser time thing.
Right.
If teams are taking their scouts times over laser times, they're dinosaurs. It's ridiculous, and that would be the case for a lot of players. And Schefter's not doing any of their agents favors by tweeting that out. So it's bullshit. I'm more comfortable with Tate based on how frequently he was mentioned first by virtually everybody that talked about receivers, and by the fact that he makes catches and does seem to run away from people, whether that number is a great number or not. So there's some wide receivers that just don't run as well against the clock as you'd like them to, but it doesn't really diminish their speed to the degree you would think. So my concerns there have been alleviated. I'd rather not take him at 4, but I'd be completely comfortable with the Titans taking him. And I think serving Cam Ward, I know people talk about the running back a lot. They've got to have a big time receiver for him. If the best you can do in free agency is Romeo Doubs, you need to do better than that in the draft. And he's doing better than that in the draft. So
I agree. And I think that's what it's like. How can you even have a different what do you mean a 40 time with hand stop? Like, what are we talking about? Carnell Tate is an excellent contested catch guy. And so if you are gonna be a little slower, DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams and those types of players, you better be an elite contested catch guy. And it seems like he's got those skills. Pretty polished route runner. I think he makes the team better. I think there's a handful of guys that you could take it for. That includes Love and Styles, by the way. But David Bailey, Reuben Bain, Carnell Tate, none of those guys are number 1 overall or even top 5 overall kind of grades in a loaded draft. But all of them, I think, are good enough to make your team significantly better at any given position. I am out on taking any of the receivers at 4, personally. I think you can add Bailey or Bain and make your team really great. Add another receiver later on. You can keep Calvin Ridley. But the bottom line is, and this is kind of what I was getting at, PK, which is you could trade for Jermaine Johnson. You could sign John Franklin Myers. You could draft Bailey at 4 and go sign another outside linebacker edge type player. Have Femi play with his hand in the dirt and still think like we're going to be better. We fixed this problem, but still like need to use a lot of them and all of them to fix the problem. The same thing can be said at wide receiver, which is throw a lot of resources at it. You keep Calvin Ridley. You drafted 2 guys last year in the 4th round that got a lot of playing time. You use the 4th pick or the 6th pick or the 8th pick on Carnell Tate. Then you draft then maybe you sign Romeo Doubs. Like if you told me it was Ridley and Tate and Doubs with Io Manor and DK, you've taken a weakness, turned it into a strength in one offseason. But you could do that with edge or receiver, and I don't think you can go wrong with either of those 2 strategies.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sick of throwing a lot of – I mean, I'd take that wide receiver group. I still think it would lack the superstar guy. But look, Jackson Smith and Jigba ran a 4.5 something, and he was Offensive Player of the Year. So, would I like a 4.4 guy? Yeah. We weren't expecting Tate, by the way, to run a 4.4. So that there's some scandal to the fact that he didn't is the surprise.
Agree.
Expect him to run a 4.5 going in. He runs a 4.5, and then there's some scandal attached to him not running a 4.4. Seems ridiculous.
4.5 is plenty fast enough to be a good receiver in the NFL.
Yeah. Especially for a guy that had his production at his level of college ball.
Yeah. And this is good to remember, just so that we all remember. Retrodax, good memory here. It's Lion season. People use Shefty to post weird stuff all the time. That's correct. Sergeant Bubble, still my favorite commenter we have. Chris Bell, wide receiver out of Louisville, in the 2nd or 3rd will be recovering from the ACL to start the season, but could be still good value. I agree. I totally agree. I think Bell at 35 is an excellent option, especially if you are comfortable with the medical side of this stuff. So there you go.
I like him. Wouldn't be my first choice path to getting better at wide receiver, but there are many.
Casey Concepcion could be available. We mentioned Chris Brazel is going to be available probably at 35. You got Zachariah Branch and Jeremy Bernard, who both performed very well.
Is not expected to last till 35 from people I talked to.
I agree with that. Titan says something very Braden is good at this. What he said about improving the team dramatically at pass rusher or wide receiver is spot on. Edge seems way more doable than wide receiver to me. I do think they're similar now, though, because of Johnson and Ridley. Like now that you have Johnson in the fold, if they were to keep Ridley, it just pushes everybody down the depth chart for 1 year or 2. Like that's all you're doing is you're putting it together for right now. So
it'd be great if they could decide on Ridley after, at least after free agency, but you can't do that to the guy,
Somebody earlier asked about Tyler Lindenbaum, so I guess maybe this is the right time to ask. You reported this. Kevin Zeitler and Chigakonkwo look like the 2 guys that they're going to try to bring back. Potentially doesn't mean they're going to get them, but they're going to try to bring them back. It certainly alleviates the need to target guard or tight end in the draft or free agency. We know they're going to have to go get a center, either in the draft or free agency or both. Somebody asked about Tyler Linderbaum. It seems like there's a handful of centers that they could go after. What do you make about their strategy in the offensive line department, considering Zeitler and Cushenberry news over the last 7 days?
Yeah, well, I certainly think, they like Zeitler next to Latham, and they don't want to have to get 2/5 of an offensive line now having to replace Cushenberry. And so I think that's pretty solid there. Does he want to keep playing? I would think he'd like to not change address again. He's changed address a lot. But lately it's a new regime, so we'd be learning a new coach, a new system, all of that stuff again anyway. So it comes down to price. I think it's kind of fascinating with Chig because the way it's spelled out to me is they'd like to keep him. So I think that comes down to Dayball looking at him and saying, I could do some things with this guy for yards after the catch, and that is a value to the offense. But if we don't keep him, we're going a different direction, and we're looking for a Y inline tight end. And you watched my podcast from Saturday. The guys that they would look at as solutions here: Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar, who was the third one I mentioned.
Better block the blocking. Bellinger, is that correct?
All substantially better run blockers than Chigakonkwo. So we're going to stay with what we have. We know him, we like him, and we like the yards after catch element to him. But if we don't retain him, we are going to change our identity at that position and go for a far better run blocking type. Not that those three guys can't do damage with the ball in their hands and be effective pass catchers. I really like the idea of Kolar. If you look at his numbers, he's pretty well-rounded tight end.
Yeah, he's a good player.
And all of these guys have a size advantage over Chig. And I think, Chig doesn't, I don't want to say wears down, but he does disappear in stretches. I think
he does.
Other guys might be more consistent. Likely gets too dinged up for me. Bellinger, though, obviously well known by Dayball, and Kolar, I think, attractive. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. And I think it'd be a question of Chig pricing himself out of the Titans market.
That's very much possible. I really like Chig on this team. Just if the price is reasonable, I think there's very few people that do things after the catch. I think his personality in the locker room is of value. He's one of the more veteran pieces in that group. I think he's somebody, to your point, I think a good offensive coordinator, a good scheme with Cam Ward as his second season with a decent running game around him, that you could find ways to better, more efficiently use him and maybe deploy him more consistently. But you've got to get a true blocking tight end. You need your Craig Stevens is what you need. And those are much easier to find. In fact, I think Rob Nell says this. I think it's Riley Nitkowski out of Indiana. Really good blocking tight end. So you can go get those guys are one of the cheapest things you can get. It's a great blocking tight end. So I could see them keeping Chig around. Now, if he wants, I don't know what PK is too much. $9 million a year, $8 million a year. That's too much.
Projected is 9.
That's too much, probably, right? That's Jonnu Smith money.
Yeah.
When he left, I mean,
feels high.
Yeah, that's what I would say too. All right, so let me ask you about. I want to go back to the combine real quickly to wrap up here. Sinkers Beverages, make sure you support those guys. Go to a local tap room. You can read paulkuharsky.com while drinking a local craft beer that you bought at Sinkers. How about that? Listen to all the other great shows across the network as well. Hot Read Podcast and SEC Football Live, gold standard for Preds hockey. Got the trade deadline coming up. We got a new season for Nashville SC right now. Club and Country podcast covering soccer in this market. Of course, the World Cup coming to the United States in the summertime. We got lots of good stuff for all you guys in Tennessee, so please support us if you can. Look, there's a lot of players that I think did pretty well, and I think you wrote the story. Look, they're not really – the boards aren't changing too much, but I do think the media and the fans catch up to some of these boards because the testing in the combine kind of validates the tape. And I think I had a bunch of names written down that I thought changed maybe their stock generally. And that is, and I think of players that are of note for the Titans, I think they would have targeted. I'm going to go quickly here, PK, and then you can kind of jump in afterward with the names that you may like. I think Jacob Rodriguez, linebacker out of Texas Tech, would be a really good late round target. Going to have to go earlier now on him. Bud Clark, safety out of TCU. Really great hybrid, sort of really good cover safety. He's a really good player I've liked for a long time. Probably going to have to go earlier on him. Jack Kelly, which strikes me as the exact right name for a Mike Vrabel Titans linebacker as well. BYU player. He's moving up, quote unquote, moving up boards. Kyle Lewis, I think, is a guy that I am circling hardcore for the Titans. He is a high athletic linebacker, converted safety who can play in space, which is what you need to pair with Cedric Gray. I think he's moved, quote unquote, moved up, but could be in play at 101. Maybe if you trade back in the third round. Chris Johnson, D'Angelo Pons, and the Stukes kid out of Arizona, all three are corners that I think are in play at either 35 or 66 for this team. So a lot of really good. Malachi Lawrence is an edge rusher that if they don't draft Bailey, they could come back and get later. At a UCF who tested really well. Tested really well. Wow.
Tasted again for the first time.
Dennis Sutton out of Penn State had a really great combine as well. So there's a number of players and at positions of need that have done a really good job this past week and have sort of validated their stock. So
I like of those Jackson and Pons at corner and Malachi Lawrence as a rusher. I'm all very intrigued by, and I'm with you on that. I'm trying to look at Keontae Scott's numbers. Do you have something like that in front of you?
I can try to. I really like him. I thought he did really well in interviews. Let me check his testing numbers. I did not see that.
I thought I wrote a story about while you're looking those up about Robert Saleh said about Titans nickel, and he said it's really a linebacker spot now. Linebacker mentality, certainly. You're not getting linebacker size there. Now, Marcus Harris is going to be in the equation to some degree, but Keontae Scott really plugged into that linebacker mentality the way he talked. I liked him a lot. I don't know what he did measurement-wise.
5'11", 193, 31 3/8 arms. He is pretty – this is just random because I'm looking at this on – the NFL Network, so their official NFL.com website or whatever. Elijah Molden was the comp. He's a very good tackler. I'm trying to get to that. I'm trying to find his exact prospects, but or his exact times. He is a very, very good tackler, though. So I think that's the way to look at that. Do they not have all the? I thought they had the stats all posted on their website. So let's see if I can find it. So
he's a personal favorite of mine for sure. So I don't know if that means anything for his hopes of getting drafted by the Titans or if it ruins them. So
yeah, it's not giving me the numbers on this combine webpage. Maybe they haven't uploaded everything yet. So
the combine people.
I like Keontae Scott a lot as well. D'Angelo Pons is a great slot corner. TJ Hall, Devin Moore was one of the tallest players in the draft as well. I think he's going to go higher than his draft slot indicates as well. Takario Davis is a really big player. Charles Demings had a good combine. I think the quality and depth at corner, if you're doing those mock drafts, here's what I would suggest you do if you're doing the mock drafts, like the mock draft simulators. I would take either Bailey or Bain at 4. I would come back and take the best possible receiver that you like the most at 35. And then I would probably look at corner, interior offensive lineman, and linebacker, those 4 with the next 4 picks in some order. But that's how I would look at it,
I think that's wise. I've done a lot of that. Yeah. I've taken a little bit of a break from that stuff. I would hope that they adjust those things. I mean, it's so easy to wind up with the exact same people in front of you if I know the boards aren't moving a ton, as I wrote, based on what teams saw in Indianapolis. But like you said, what we saw in Indianapolis verifies what they saw, and they should move some people in those things and mix it up a little. Give us some changes.
Well, they do the consensus, and the consensus is updated every couple of weeks, and it gets updated even more. And so what you do. So the one that I use is the Pro Football Network one. If you go in there, you can select consensus as your ranking instead of their own ratings, which you don't know if their ratings, who they like more or less compared to the NFL executives. The consensus is probably the closest to what the NFL scouts are doing. And if you track the movement inside of the consensus, it does feel like it's becoming more accurate with time, more accurate relative to what the NFL already views of these players.
Which one do you use, NFL?
The mock draft one?
Yeah.
ProFootballNetwork.com.
Yeah. Okay.
Where you can do trades, you can do the full 7 rounds. For example, I did one this morning. David Bailey at 4, Omar Cooper from Indiana at 35, Devin Moore, corner out of Florida at 66. I got Traden Stukes, the corner out of Arizona at 101. Had to choose between him and Logan Jones, and then Matt Golban, offensive center out of Michigan State at 140, and Kyle Lewis, linebacker out of Pittsburgh at 142. That would be, to me, that's a spectacular draft, but I don't think it's out of whack.
Yeah, I don't know.
Based on your, I don't think there's a bunch of names in there that are going to never be available at those slots.
I don't know if Cooper's getting a 35.
He may not. He may not. So this I was doing this all morning, by the way. Bustin' Diamond says, unrelated to sports or Titans, but the new Sturgill Simpson album kicks ass. He wanted to do a dance, like a country dance, like hardcore country dance album, and he did it. So he's a total genius.
Why did he want to do that?
Because he's a total weirdo, and weirdos make good musicians, you know? You know, just a blue collar boy from Jersey. Those records all sound the same, you know? So
no, they don't.
Unless the value for corners at 35 is better than wide receiver. It could be, but Colton Hood, Brandon Cisse, are they better than who could be available at wide receiver?
Boy,
I don't know.
Hood. I'd love to have that guy in the locker room.
He's an interesting cat, dude.
Really interesting.
Yeah, he's really fun. I don't think Scott ran. There you go. Maybe that's why it's not listed on his bio. There we go. Who are you targeting in the draft if we sign Wan'Dale Robinson? To me, that means you want to go more
outside.
Chris Brazzell. You want to go Chris Brazzell, Malachi Fields, Ted Hurst out of Georgia State. Those are the bigger body sort of outsides. But do they pair with Ridley, without Ridley? I don't know. That's tough. Ooh, tough.
It's just not true.
Tough.
You haven't listened enough.
That is fair. That's fair. Okay. Anything else you want to add to the, like, is there, I'm trying to get you to, what is outside of is it a player? Is it a team? Is it a strategy? Is it a pick? What is the thing that changed the most in your trip to Indianapolis for a week? Is there a strategy that's not ever had? Like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, you went in to the week thinking one thing.
I have to say, I didn't come away with some big thematic change. Maybe I failed there. I gathered a ton of information for a bunch of stories that will trickle out between now and the draft that I think will be good. I think I've got some more Titans specific stuff too that will come out. I wrote, a little bit before the show about them adding more to the training / strength department. So they've got even another degree of sports science coming in the training thing, which is an area I think is very important to them. They went from 21st in injuries to 6th. Now, I think there's a ton of luck involved in that. And I think that the sports science department can get too much blame when things go bad and probably too much credit when things go well. But I like investing in that and trying hard there. And so they're doing more of that, which I think is smart. Give it all the resources and human power that you can.
Yeah.
And so I like that trend. And finding out things like Saleh looks at that nickel spot as a linebacker mentality kind of thing. I think that's telling. So just kind of putting together those little things and putting them into practice in terms of who's out there and what they might do, I think is interesting.
That is good stuff. One I forgot to mention here, PK. Ty Simpson did very well, and he was already sort of a mid to late first round guy. If for whatever reason he can continue to have an exceptional pre-draft process, that's one of those guys that you could see creeping into the top 10, and all of a sudden the price just continues to inflate. And maybe, just maybe, someone wants to come up to 4 to get him. I don't think so, but there have been quarterbacks that have had that type of journey pre-draft before. So,
I would not put it past the Jets taking him at 2.
Okay.
I mean, usually the buzz would be harder or buzzier by now, but we know time and time again, nothing gets a team crazier than quarterback need and a quarterback that they fall in love with. And he's a fall in love with kind of guy. I mean, he's got the personality of fall in love with.
Very accurate.
And
very
you can convince yourself. You can convince yourself when that's your biggest need.
Yeah.
And you see a guy that does some things that fit, and you start to plug him in and say, look at him throwing to Drake London and handing off to Breece Hall. He can solve a lot of our problems. And all of a sudden, maybe you're not thinking about him at 2, but maybe you're thinking 4.
4. The Rams, all it takes is Sean McVay to think that you are the next starting quarterback for the next 10 years for him. And he's got 2 first-round picks. And he could come up to – you give up 2 first-round picks. What are they, 13 and 26 or something? You give up those 2 picks to come up to 4. I think you'd do that if you're the Titans. I think you have to do it.
I think so too, but can't you get him at 13?
That's the problem. This is what we don't.
For him.
This is to me, this is the point of mentioning him, which is there has to continue to be a pre-draft buzz that grows. Like this, he has to keep he did what he needed to do in the combine through the interview process and being very accurate to benefit the Titans, which is he went from maybe the 20th pick to like the 15th pick. Now you need him to have a great pro day and some more stuff happen, and he just keeps doing better. People like the tape, and actually somebody gets real desperate and they're picking 11 or 12 or 13, and all of a sudden they want to come up and get a guy at 4. So,
well, who's the quarterback? Here's the question. Who's the quarterback needy team? Let's look here. Browns at 6. Or
that's a perfect one. That's a perfect one.
Or Miami at 11 start to buzz about him, even if they don't like him, to get somebody, if they hear the Rams like him, then they start rumbling.
Yeah.
To try to get somebody to trade up ahead of them.
Yeah.
So,
it's just something worth noting. That's all.
Yeah. No, I think they'll be around the buzz about Simpson. There will.
I think so. I think so too. He's very, very accurate. He's a very polished pocket presence guy. If you watch his feet and mechanics in the pocket, he does a really good job sort of stepping up into pressure and delivering all the things you want Cam Ward to do, frankly. Very accurate passer of the football and sort of has the head on his shoulders to do all the things you want a franchise quarterback to do. I'm not saying I'd take him and think he's better than Cam Ward or not. I don't mean Titans like me on my team. I don't know if I would draft him. I don't think you necessarily think he's that good. But if you're a Titans fan, you want the buzz to continue to grow, because then there's just an outside chance that someone's willing to pay to come up to 4 and get him. And that's what you want. You just want the buzz to continue. So,
and you love Bama quarterbacks. We all know that.
Me?
Yep.
Which Bama quarterback do I love?
All of them.
Really?
Tua. Hurts.
I love Tua. Since when? I think Bryce Young had an interesting season. I think Jalen Hurts is a Super Bowl champion.
There you go. See, I told you.
I can just mention guys. I really love Georgia quarterbacks. I think Matt Stafford and Carson Beck are amazing. You could do this all day. Like
SEC.
Jalen Hurts played in the Big 12 also, just for the record.
Big 12.
There you go. Drew Aller looked pretty good. Garrett Nussmeier was great against air. There you go. Okay. All right. That about does it for us. PaulKuharsky.com is the website. Make sure you support good local journalism and support good local businesses as well, small businesses in particular. Sinkers Beverages, 440 Sports and Media. We do appreciate all your support and all your comments on YouTube as well. Thumbs up, notifications turned on. Please do so. Otherwise, shop at Sinkers, read Paul Kuharsky, and listen to 440. Otherwise, have a great week. We'll be back on Thursday, me and Suss, and enjoy all the rest of the other shows. For Paul, I'm Braden. Thanks for hanging out. We'll talk to you next time.